As the leader of the Booner Pack, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the up, boys.
It's pumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Crunch Time Sports. Today, as always, last week, I did this, and I did my Monday morning thoughts on the Detroit Lions. Now, that was different because they beat the Packers on Thursday, and I went live Monday. This is a little different, right? We're a day after a big loss, a significant loss. I know people might say, well, it's not that important, but we're going to talk about it today. Go into the injuries, go into some rumors surrounding the Detroit Lions, give my kind of thoughts on what they can do moving forward. And I have some pretty interesting stats that I'll ask you guys whether you should be concerned or not. So I have a poll in the chat, and it's a very simple poll. Your panic level: very panicked, slightly panicked, not worried at all. Where are you at when it comes to being a Detroit Lions fan, and kind of your worry heading into the playoffs, rest of the season? And the reason why I asked that isn't for people to say I've lost all faith in the Lions to be able to win a Super Bowl. It's not what I'm trying to insinuate or trying to spark some controversial conversation. All I'm trying to ask is your worry level with the injuries, because at some point there has to be a time where maybe you do hit the panic button. So I want to know where you guys are at with it. So that's why I put the poll in the chat. So good morning to you all. Hopefully you're having a great morning, a great day at work. And I know you guys are looking for Lions content, and I got a lot of things on my mind as well. The injuries have to be the storyline. That's where we have to start, especially when Dan Campbell comes out yesterday after the game and brings up Aleem McNeil and Carlton Davis, who left the game early. Aleem looked – I didn't see Carlton Davis, to be honest with you. So I didn't know how bad it was until Dan had this comment, but I did see Aleem's injury, and it did not look great. So that was concerning to me. But now that Dan has come out and said, hey, could be season ending, it's just, can the Lions get a break, please? That's what's frustrating me. It's just like, okay, you lose Aiden. Terrible. It's a catastrophic injury. You keep pushing. You got a ton of guys on IR, which I will show you guys in a second to kind of put into perspective how injured the Detroit Lions are. But then you get this. Aleem McNeil, your starting defensive tackle, and Carlton Davis, your number one corner, could be out for the season. Yeah, it's tough. And not only that, but you lost. So it's not even like you won and guys are hurt, which would still stink. But you lost, and guys could miss the entire season. So it is a brutal time right now. It's people are trying to look for some positivity, which I completely understand. And I will say the Lions are still a very good team. They are very good team. Offensively, they had no issues. Late, I should say. Early on, they have had issues the last two games running the football, which I will get to later. But let me show you guys the injury, kind of what it looks like, the depth chart, because this is rough. You guys can see it now on ESPN. I mean, look at this. On offense, it's a little different. Not as many injuries, and guys that are injured aren't really, all due respect, guys you depend on. But then you go to the defense. Look at this. This is insane. The amount of injuries the Lions have on defense. I think I read somewhere there's like 20 guys. I mean, you have Aleem McNeil and Carlton Davis potentially out for the year, but Trevor Nowatzki was missing that game. He'll be back. He had a concussion. Broderick Martin, he'll be fine. I'm not too worried about that. But IR, Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Pecco, Derek Barnes, Anzalone, John Kaminsky, which he's expected to be back, but Mekhi Wingo out for the year. Ennis Rakestraw, iffy, IR. Emmanuel Mosley, you're probably going to lean more on him, but Khalil Dorsey, terrible injury. He's out for the year, which is brutal for a guy that's super important on special teams. So they just can't. The injury bug, it's like when it happens, it happens. Once there's injuries, it starts spreading. And the Detroit Lions got very lucky last year, and they didn't really have to deal with any injuries, too many. And it doesn't happen. Typically in the NFL, there's going to be injuries. Now, to this extent, this is insane. I think the Lions have the most injuries in the NFL. It's a whole nother level this year. So, when you're talking about your linebacker core, for example, You have Germ, Anzo, Derek Barnes all out. Ben Neiman, Jack Campbell, Trevor Nowaski, and then you sign guys like a Jamal Adams, who I will admit I was wrong. Okay, I was excited to see Jamal this week. I think he played 17 snaps and it made little to no impact. So even the players you signed and brought in to kind of help out a little bit just aren't enough. Like they can't stop the bleeding. David Long, Quan Alexander, Jamal Adams. They can't stop the bleeding. And it's not like it's their fault. They're just, hey, I'm just here. I was signed. I'm ready to contribute. It's just not enough. You've lost very, very key players, and you're expected to get some back for the playoffs. So there's the positive. Okay, I'll give you guys that. I don't want to get too. There's the positive. They could come back for the playoffs. At least Anzo, maybe Derek Barnes, John Kaminsky. It's tough. Trying to find a positive in this whole thing. And Matt in the comments, this is a Lions therapy session. Yeah, I mean, guys, drop your thoughts. I would love to go to you guys on this, kind of get the vibe of Lions fans and how you guys are feeling, because, again, there's things I want to bring up that I've kind of wrote down here and wrote down yesterday, but I would love to hear from you all. Truthfully, this is what this show is kind of meant for, to talk with you guys and kind of get a feel of the temperature. Where are we at in terms of the panic level? I already put the poll in the chat there. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and vote. And I'll go back to that kind of halfway through the show and get a check up there. But I want to get to some press conference clips. I have clips here from Dan Campbell, clips here from Jared Goff. So I will start with Dan Campbell's clips here from him speaking after the game, and we'll kind of share our thoughts together. Put them in the comments. But here's Dan Campbell right after the loss to the Buffalo Bills. Let's take a listen to what Dan had to say here. Hold on 1 second. All right.
Man, I just feel like we didn't play at the same level that team did today. That's how I feel, and that's why honestly I put this on me, man. I just didn't feel like I had them ready to go. Not like we've been.
Yeah, so there's Dan. He also had another comment here I want to bring up, and this is Dan Campbell in his postgame as well. But let's see. Kind of responding to the, got to move forward. They got a game this week. And Dan, I'll tell you this, Dan does a great job of getting the guys back on track. And honestly, I feel more comfortable if that Dan Campbell's in the driver's seat. I think that's a very fair point. It's like there's not too many coaches in the league that when you face this much adversity, you're looking at your head coach going, yeah, I got faith in that guy. And that's Dan Campbell. So I will say this, but here's Dan Campbell after the game as well, talking about the loss. But let's take a listen to this clip.
And I'm serious. It starts with me, man. I have to do a much better job of getting these guys ready to roll and be urgent about, this type of opponent. So no excuses. We just wasn't good enough. And that was the bottom line. It's frustrated. Everybody's frustrated. Guys are frustrated. But you know what? That's part of life, man. You lose, and it's a bad taste in your mouth. And now what are we going to do about it? Do we sit there and feel sorry for ourselves? We're going to bounce back and go to Chicago. So,
there you go. Yeah, Dan, he's very, accountability. He does that. It's on me. It's on me. It's on me. He says that. Okay. But it's not all on Dan Campbell. Okay. I know he's going to say that as a head coach, but to me, the story of the game was the defense, in the injuries, I should say. The injuries. And Prince says, I feel fine other than injuries. Our defensive scheme was horrendous, but we got third stringers in, so not sure what else to expect. And Prince, you were absolutely right. It's like, how do you walk away from that game and be like, yeah, this defense stinks without bringing up the injuries? It's just, at what point is it too much? And I get it's fun to be positive, and it's fun to talk about, well, they're overcoming a lot of adversity with the injuries, which they have. And Aaron Glenn, I don't want to make this an Aaron Glenn bash session, because how do you expect Aaron Glenn to have a functioning defense when you're looking at the personnel and going, what? I mean, and Dan Campbell did not want to use the injuries as an excuse, and I do respect that, but he's not going to go up there and be like, well, the injuries. But he's got to know. He's got to look at this team and be like, man, damn, you're missing half your defense, essentially. And you're having guys that you signed off the street come in and contribute. So it is the injuries. And that is a huge reason. It happens in the NFL. I haven't seen it this bad, but it happens to where teams that are Super Bowl contenders, you lose guys and season, it changes. Now, if you lose a quarterback, your season's over. The Lions are still in this thing, right? You still have the best offense in the league, and they will keep you in games. But this defense, and maybe it's one of those games that I've been hearing it all over town. It just had to happen. They've won, 11 straight, 12 straight. At some point, you were going to lose. And I get that point. But to lose like that is insane. Like when you go back and look, and you look at the offensive yards, you're like, well, the Lions kind of kept up with the Bills. And at the end of the game, they did. They scored like 21 in the fourth quarter. But for a while there, even the offense, in running the football, they can't do it the last two games, which, again, I will get to later. But the defense could not get a stop. They could not force a punt. I think they forced one punt the entire game, if I'm not mistaken. One punt, a single punt. And yes, it was against the best quarterback in the league. Honestly, the best player in the league in Josh Allen. So, am I going to jump up and down and freak out about it? No, because Josh Allen's been playing incredible. He's the MVP. He locked it up yesterday. But it just felt like the effort wasn't there like we're used to seeing. The Lions on defense got moved off the ball. And this was before Aleem McNeil went down, by the way. Like they pride themselves on being the more physical team. Every week. Yesterday, it was not the case. It wasn't just they weren't the more physical team. They got moved around on both sides. I mean, you saw Frank Ragnow getting destroyed. And that never happens. He's one of the best centers in the league. So it was just one of those games. And hopefully we can say that. It's just one of those games. And you don't see something like that again. But the reality is you're going to face Josh Allen probably in the Super Bowl if you make it. But I don't even want to talk about the Super Bowl. I talked about this on the postgame. I'm sorry. I don't think the Lions, after that loss, we should just assume they're going to make the Super Bowl. We got to have some real conversations here. Getting through the playoffs, getting a bye week, getting the number one seed. That should be the priority now with the injuries. Getting the number one seed, getting the bye week, getting through the NFC. Let's just start there. I know Dan's focused on that as well. But, I mean, these injuries piling up like this, I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention, we got to get through the NFC first. Let's not talk about the Super Bowl and facing Josh Allen. And we're already there. Book your ticket to New Orleans. No. Let's get through the NFC because the injuries could at some point you're going to have Kindle Vildor out there for the rest of the year, Terran Arnold out there for the rest of the year, which he's been up and down, but still, is he ready to be your number one corner? No. And your defensive line, if you don't have Aleem McNeil, you got Pat O'Connor, DJ Reader, and I like Pat, but that's a tough spot to be in. It just is. And Zadarius Smith played like 40% of the snaps yesterday. I don't know why. Maybe that's a matchup thing. Who knows? But Josh Pascal didn't look good. So, this defensive line, it's concerning because now if you're not getting pressure, and it's not even like, I get it, it's Josh Allen, so it's going to be hard to sack him, but not only did they get moved off the ball, but that defensive line yesterday played horrendous. So, can it be fixed? I don't know because you don't have Aleem now. So maybe Levi steps in and Levi's, he shows a ton more and maybe you get some more juice there, but I don't know what to expect. I really don't. Zachary King says there is an injury bug, but there is what happened to the Lions this year. I mean, Harris, Levi just needs to stay healthy. Yeah, please. And Josh, but for that matter. Let's shout out Francisco. Losing Aleem McNeil and Carlton Davis is a breaking point on the defense. I don't think this team can get to the Super Bowl with this amount of injuries. I'm going to be honest, Francisco. I don't think that's a bad take, honestly. I don't. And I know people would be like, oh, I think it's a real conversation. Let's just talk about getting there first, and again, the injuries, Aaron Glenn can only, and I mentioned this, like we talk about Aaron Glenn making chicken soup out of chicken shit. But at some point, it's not even chicken shit in a chicken soup. It's like, it's like sewage. And I said sewage into like filet. It's like the worst. It's not even. I don't think it would even be fair to call it chicken shit in the chicken soup. Like AG, there's no way he's going to take Jamal Adams, David Long Jr., Quan Alexander, Kendall Vildor, Pat O'Connor, and say, all right, boys, we're going to a Super Bowl. So now you have Dan Campbell, who probably understands this as well as anybody, and understands, well, we're going to have to be more aggressive then on offense. We have to score points. They have to. And not like they had this mindset of, oh, we can chill before, but now there's even more pressure on the offense to put up 30, 40 points. If you look at the last two games, guys, the Lions scored 76 points. 76 last two games. Across the NFL, if any fan base heard that, it's holy shit, we got a good offense. 76 points last two games. Now, you might ask, how much have they given up? 79 points the last two games. Yeah, 79 points the last two games. 76 points scored, 79 points given up. Like, I mean, at some point, it's not even bend, don't break. It's just break. That's essentially what's happening here. They gave up 48 to the Bills, 31 to the Packers. They scored 42 against the Bills, scored 34 against the Packers. It's tough. You have this magnificent historic offense and the defense with injuries. It's brutal. It just is. Excuse me. Michael, it's 100% the injuries, but if Dan calls out the injuries as a reason why they're losing, it's like he doesn't trust his backups. Yeah, exactly. He's saying what he has to keep the guys confident in the field. Michael, you're spot on. There's no way Dan would go to the presser and mention injuries. But they know it as well as we do. Their injuries are brutal. And I want to mention one thing, too, before I get to that. Zachary came. Good question. What is up with Mosley? I know someone else asked about Mosley, too. How close is Rakestraw to coming back? Rakestraw is close. Based on IR. I don't have any medical information with Rakestraw. I don't know, like, the severity of the injury. But based on IR, it's 4 games, and I believe he's placed a couple games ago. So he's close. But still, guys, I like the Rakestraw pick. I think he's more of a developmental player than Terrion Arnold is. But to have 2 rookie corners out there, I mean, we're right back where we started. Is he better than Vildor? I would assume yes. But 2 rookie corners, it's a tough spot to be in. Like Carlton was the guy. And he's been playing really well this year. He really has. And, I mean, he's been playing well all year, but since that Houston game, he's been on another level. I know he's given up some plays, but Carlton's been very good. So that's, even if Rakestraw does come back, it's tough. And you have Iffy Melifonwu potentially coming back, but it's still, that'll help. But Ali McNeil, to me, is a big loss there. I mean, it really is. And now I'll mention the onside kick, because I saw this trending as well, and people kind of freaking out about the onside. And I would love you guys, honestly, share your thoughts in the chat. I'll go to you guys. What do you think about the onside kick? Because I don't have a problem with the onside kick. I didn't at the time. I know we were at the Hub Sports Bistro. We were doing a show on the road, and it was great. It was fun. Everyone in that place was freaking out about the onside kick. But the more I thought about it, this is the conclusion I came to. I don't have an issue with him trying to steal a possession. I know I was watching, if you guys watch Shannon Sharp at all, he's always going to speak his mind. On his pod, Nightcap, he mentioned that, you know what, if you can't stop the Buffalo Bills, why give them a short field? Yeah, I don't know about that. I think when you're looking at the Buffalo Bills, or you're looking at Dan Campbell, his perspective, looking at the Buffalo Bills, you're thinking, okay, we can't stop this team anyway. Let's try and steal a possession. You're in the 4th quarter. I didn't hate the onside kick. But the thing that was confusing to me, and I would love Dan Campbell to get asked this at some point, is why go for an onside kick with 12 minutes left, but then you don't go for it with 8 minutes left? That's the only thing I didn't understand. I don't know. It's just like, so you feel urgency with 12 minutes, but then you don't feel as much urgency with 8 minutes. That's the only thing I was a little confused by. But I didn't hate the onside, trying to steal a possession. I think that's fair. I mean, with how the defense was playing, with the injuries, and yeah, I don't hate that. Michael, why key them run 7 minutes off the clock, though? Yeah, that's a good point, too. You're making them go the whole field. You're going to lose a ton of time, because honestly, they couldn't stop the run which was the most surprising to me out of anything. They could not stop the run at all. And that to me is a probably a bigger issue because this team has kind of prided themselves on being able to stop the run. When you look at yesterday, I got the exact yards per carry here. James Cook, he played. I was big on under everything James Cook. He averaged 7.5 yards a carry. James Cook averaged 7.5 yards a carry, sprinkling a 41-yard run, which was the start of the second half that set the tone. And then you have Josh Allen, who's also averaging 6.2 yards a carry. That's a problem. They averaged 5.8 as a team, like almost 6 a carry. And that was with Aleem early. So to me, that was the big issue there. It is not like the secondary giving up yards. It's just if you're letting teams run for 5-6 yards a carry and you can't get a stop, and they're lighting you up in the passing game, that's a problem. And that's why I emphasized earlier, they got moved off the ball. They got dominated at the line of scrimmage, which you got a team in the Eagles which pride themselves on dominating the line of scrimmage. If you watch that Eagles-Steelers game, the Eagles dominated the trenches. They protected Jalen Hurts. He wasn't touched. And on defense, they didn't allow the Steelers to run the ball at all. And they got after Russell Wilson. So, again, are the Eagles world beaters? No. But when you talk about matching up with them in an NFC Championship game, you can't get moved off the ball like that. Because Saquon Barkley, the best running back in the league right now, newsflash, he's better than James Cook. So if you play like that against the Eagles, it could get ugly. And that to me is that's the team. Like I think the Lions are better than every team. And I think they're still a top team, but the Eagles are at this point, now that we're progressing through the season with more injuries, they're the team that can definitely take down the Lions. Like I with the injuries now piling up and you don't have Aleem and Carlton Davis, you have to play some damn good football. And the best thing you can do is make them come to Ford Field. That's the best thing you can do. That raises your chances of winning that ball game. So you got to get the number 1 seed. You don't want to travel to Philly with all these injuries, young players, Ezekiel Turner. You just don't. And hopefully by that time you get Anzalone and Derek Barnes back and it helps out a little bit because Anzalone's presence has been missed in the run game for sure. He's a sideline to sideline guy, and they don't have a guy like him. They just don't. So them getting moved off the ball was a huge concerning thing for me. I mean, it just is, and that's something you moving forward. You still got the Vikings at the end of the year, which will be a tough time, but I still think they'll win that game. I know it's at Ford Field. We'll see how things progress. Hopefully they don't lose any more guys, but yeah, it is the injuries thing, man. I just can't get over. I've never seen this. I just haven't. It's crazy. Now I will say if we're talking about what they could do to get back on track, I would bring up immediately my opinion. Get back on track. What do the Lions have to do? Enough of the negative stuff. What do they have to do? You got to get the run game going. They have to, because I wrote this down. I also tweeted this out, which I'm going to put this tweet up for you guys so you guys can kind of see. And this is the most concerning thing on offense for me. Not them scoring a bunch of points, but this is the identity of the Detroit Lions in the last 2 games. They have not been able to do it. And that is running the football. The Detroit Lions need to get back to their efficient rushing offense. Jahmyr Gibbs, the last 2 games, 23 carries, 74 yards. That's 3.2 yards per carry. David Montgomery, last 2 games, 19 carries, 55 yards. That's 2.8 yards per carry. I mean, if I told you guys 2 games ago, and I said, hey, in the next 2 games, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery will combined for 6 a carry, you would say, what? No way. Combined for 6 a carry. That's typically what Jahmyr Gibbs gets on his own. He's a 6-yard a carry guy, 5.5 or whatever the number is. They're averaging 6 together. So, I mean, they've rushed for, what is that, $120 roughly in the last 2 games. And Jared Goff is balling, by the way. Like, he is doing everything he can do. But they need these two to get back on track. And honestly, they need the O-line to start dominating the line of scrimmage again. Because for whatever reason, the last two games, they have not looked the same. And they had Taylor Decker back this game. So you can't even really use that either. And again, talking about the NFC, because guys, this is what we have to discuss. You want to get to the Super Bowl? Well, you got to go through the Eagles. So when you're talking about facing an Eagles team, how can you beat them? Well, you run the football effectively. It's going to be hard because they have a really good rushing defense, but you have to dominate the line of scrimmage. They have to fix this before we get to the playoffs. Do I think they will? Yes, but it still is a problem last two games. You have to be able to keep efficient, explosive offenses off the field. And how do you do that? You dominate time of possession. You know, you dominate the line of scrimmage, and really on both sides. I mean, if you could stop the run, especially against that Eagles team, it'll benefit you. But that's what the Lions have to get back to. That's what they pride themselves on. In the last two games, they have not been able to do it. And the Packers, they won. Bills, they lost. You know, and if this was playoffs, they would be eliminated. But they're not. They're still in the regular season. So you're good. You got some time here. And there's no team in the NFC that I think is like the Buffalo Bills. You know, Josh Allen is on a whole different level. But it's still something you have to correct. So how do they get back on track? Fixing this right here. Can we get Jahmyr Gibbs going? 100 yards all purpose. And he went off. I mean, he had like 80, I think he had I have to double check how many exact receiving yards he had, but a lot of those were kind of, all due respect, kind of garbage yards. I mean, he had 83 yards, but like rushing, we're talking about just running the football. They got to get back because Jared's throwing for a ton of yards. But yeah, Demont, he's the engine. I mean, you can't have Demont go 4 carries, 5 yards. I mean, that's just not going to work. So, and I know he's battling injuries too. I know it's brutal, but they need these two. They need these two to win a Super Bowl. They just do. Let's get to some comments here. Matt, run the ball. Set up play action. When we don't run the ball, we lose. I mean, well said, Matt. Matt also says, we win out and we have home field advantage and a bye. We'll be fine. Yes, and that's the pathway. You got to win out. You got to get home field. You get the bye week, and you make the Eagles come to Detroit. That's how you can soften the blow of the injuries, make it easier on everybody. You don't want to travel and not have a bye week. You're just making it more of an uphill battle. Let's see. Detroit needs to bring in Patrick Peterson. He got released like a month ago. Well, I'm open to anything. I mean, let's just sign anyone out there. Like, just bring in help at this point. You're going to have to try and patch it up, but yeah, they need corners. They do. Now you don't have Dorsey. You don't have Davis. That's significant. Let's see. Zachary says, run the ball, find new ways to get pressure on the quarterback. That's been a huge thing. I mean, they have not gotten much pressure over the last couple of games. So that's a whole nother thing. Is that easily fixable? I mean, not really. Especially if you're facing good offensive lines. Missing Aiden, we kind of knew this was going to happen. You're going to lose a little bit of juice there. But Za'Darius, there's a feeling I get, and again, I'm just saying this, it's Monday morning, partially overreaction. Are we putting too much on Za'Darius Smith's plate? Like, do we expect this man to fill the void of Aiden Hutchinson? And he's just not, he's not going to do it. So when you're looking at this defensive line, my big thing was, well, Za'Darius, Aleem, DJ Reader, and Josh can help kind of collectively do it. But with Aleem out for the year, that's brutal. So you're basically trading Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil for Za'Darius Smith, which, all due respect, I would love to see Za'Darius next year next to Aiden. But by himself, this is a guy who played next to Myles Garrett in Cleveland. Like, I think there's part of it where I think Lions fans might be depending on him too much, which, like, again, what do you expect? Like, he's the big acquisition. He's going to have 10 sacks on the year. Like, he's a very good player, but there's only so much he can do too. And he's 32 years old. You know, he's getting up there in age. So I think it's unfair to kind of ask that much of him. But again, You paid to do it, so you do. And Matt also bringing up Broderick Martin has a big opportunity too. And that's the thing. You're going to need guys to grow up faster and mature faster. Like Broderick Martin needs to develop quicker. Last game, it was half of it was, oh, wow, look at Broderick. He's showing some flashes. And then there's half of it where it's like, holy shit, he's still a liability at times. So I hope Broderick can come in and be a contributor of some fashion. But yeah, to Matt's point, you need some of these young guys to grow up quickly. Like Taron Arnold, here you go. Got to grow up quickly. And he's so, dude, he handles himself like a pro. I don't know if you guys watched Taron Arnold's postgame, scrum, him talking to the media. He's impressive, dude. He really is. So Taron Arnold's he's a hell of a player. But again, I don't think he's ready to be your number one corner this year. It's just, I'll say that, all due respect. Key, appreciate you joining, man. He says, listen, there are Vikings fans selling multiple Lions fans that Za'Darius is nice, but the only problem they had is he would always come close to sacking the quarterback, but never really did as much. Yeah, I mean, it's, again, I think he's just at a point in his career where I think it'd be unfair to ask a ton out of him, you know? So we'll see. I hope Za'Darius can turn back the clock and get a sack a game. But I think it'd be unfair to kind of ask that production out of him. Now, what I will say is, looking at the rest of the NFC, Eagles, Vikings, Packers, where do I think the Lions stand in all this? I think their offense is better than any of those teams. I do. I think the Vikings, I would put the Vikings at the bottom of that list. I would say the Packers are third. Second, I'd put, as of right now, I would put the Lions. And I know people are going to hate me saying that, but I think the injuries, at some point, you got to bring up. I mean, it's bad. You got essentially half the defense's practice squad guys. I mean, at some point, we got to be honest with ourselves. You can't call a team better if they're one-dimensional. So I think as of right now, I'd put them second in the NFC. And I'd put the Eagles one. Does it mean the number two team can't beat the number one team? Absolutely they can. But I think as a team right now, with how they are playing, I would give the edge to the Eagles. I think the injuries are just stacking up. They're just too much. At some point, we got to be honest with ourselves and just be like, hey, you lost half your defense. You got a bunch of practice squad guys out there. What do you expect AJ to do? Not much. It's basically just try and stop a little bit of the bleeding. But I would give the edge of the Eagles right now. And that's me being full transparent with you guys. And this is coming from someone who last week said the Eagles, I think the Lions would be a great matchup for the Eagles. And I think the Lions will win that game. But then you lose your number one corner and starting defensive tackle. I mean, I'm looking like an idiot. So, or not really, but it aged poorly. I'll say that. I'll age poorly. So, Eagles fans, anyone who sees this, hey, lucky the Lions are injured. All right, let's see this comment. Francesco, right now the offense must score 35 points a game, and that's not a good position to be in. No, it is not. No, it is not. And Kiazi, I do remember you, brother. I just appreciate you for tuning in, as always. I do remember you. All right, let's see. Caleb. Go, Caleb. I don't know if you talked about this already, but should we move Branch to the nickel like you said yesterday? If I'm being okay, I mean, I'll say this too. I'm glad you brought that up, Caleb. It's a great question. We talked about this on the stream. Absolutely, you move Branch to nickel, and I will explain to you why. They need to make more plays at the line of scrimmage. Especially when you're facing a quarterback like Josh Allen. You need Brian Branch, who is your probably right now, no, actually not even probably. He is your best defensive player, one of the best players on your entire team. You need to move him closer to the line of scrimmage. I think that is I think that should happen because once you get Iffy back, to Matt's point in the chat, you can put Iffy at safety, move Branch to nickel, and maybe move Amik outside and have Amik and Taron Arnold. That would be my suggestion to that. Because Amik's played outside. Branch around the line of scrimmage is chef's kiss because he's going to make plays in the run game. He can get after the quarterback a little. I love that, actually. I don't know, I mentioned it yesterday on the show, but they should stick with it. They made that adjustment late in the game where they moved Branch to nickel, and he was making plays around the line of scrimmage, and they need it bad right now. And It's tough. All right, Rich. He says, is the Detroit curse still trying to rear its ugly head? Because what's up with having a literal injury to an important defensive player on every game? What kind of shit is this? Rich, also, I mean, you're not wrong. I don't know. I won't go the curse route, but the injuries, it is crazy. It's like a catastrophic injury every other game. I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen this. I just haven't. I mean, I've seen teams at times lose a bunch of guys, but yeah, the Lions, it's like a unique circumstance where it feels like every contributor that you depend on just goes down. I don't know. I really don't. But I wanted to also bring this up because, we got about 20 minutes left. I did some research because I was genuinely curious. Like I was thinking about this because I think it's important when you think about hypothetical scenarios. You try to rely on data that actually exists out there to kind of back up your arguments. Like, for example, I asked the question to you guys, your panic level, and we kind of talked about it. Can the Lions win the Super Bowl still? And I did more research on this. I Googled and spent time just kind of researching and looking through NFL history to find a team. What was some of the worst defenses to ever win a Super Bowl? Like, that was my question. Like, can the Lions do it having a bad defense? Or at least just having so many injuries? Because that's the thing that's like unique. Again, I can't find teams that were this injury riddled. But what I can find is a defense that gave up points trying to kind of project into the future and see, well, if the Lions offense can keep up what they're doing and the Lions defense keeps giving up a ton of points, can they still do it? And what I found was, looking back in NFL history, there's only been a handful of teams to win the Super Bowl having a bad defense, like really bad defense. I go back, I think the most recent example would be the 2011 Giants. Eli Manning, one of the greatest upsets, I think the greatest actually in NFL history, taking down the undefeated Patriots, which I don't know if that's a great example to use, but it could still happen. The Giants that year were 25th in points allowed, 25th in yards allowed, and 12th in DVOA. So, they weren't a great defense, but they had some good defensive players on the defensive line. That's where, I gotta put that. That's the asterisk. I mean, they had a defensive line. So that's the only thing. You're going to need this defensive line to get after the quarterback and make some good quarterbacks uncomfortable. So, yeah, that's the reality. Now, the other example I found, and this is a good one. Zachary King, New England versus Philadelphia. Yeah, the Eagles defense that year, they weren't a great defense. But again, it's tough when you bring up like examples where you would have to ask yourself, are they the one-off or are they the norm? Are they for example, like that one, Nick Foles taking down Tom Brady. Is that the anomaly? Or is that should that be something we depend on? So, but that is a fair example though. And it's funny that Tom Brady's in two of these because the Giants had a great defensive line. So that's a tough example, but that is one team that didn't have a great defense. Another one, 2009 Saints, 20th in points allowed, 25th in yards allowed, 12th in DVOA. So the 2009 Saints had Will Smith, who had 13 sacks that year, and they had a pretty good defensive line. They had Hargrove, Grant, those guys combined for 10.5 sacks. Will Smith had 13 on his own. Obviously, they had Drew Brees, and he had a great year that year, but Jared Goff's balling too. So I'm not going to – in the offense, the Saints offense, I believe they were a top offense. If I could check points for, they were first. So points against, they were 20th. So they were a top offense, bottom of the league defense, at least bottom 12. That would be, I guess, an example, but okay, there's one example. 2009 Saints. The 2006 Colts. And I think the Saints beat the Colts that year, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty sure. They beat the Colts that year, 31-17. Let me see. Check that out. Yeah, that was 2000. Yeah. Peyton Manning, he took down Peyton Manning. But there's another example. So the last example I found, the 2006 Colts. 23rd in points allowed, 21st in yards allowed, 26th in DVOA. So the 2006 Colts. That was, of course, Peyton Manning. And their defense was, 23rd in points against, second in points for. So a top offense, bottom 9 defense. But, I guess the defense, they Mathis and Freeney. That's the thing. Is like when you're, and this is the thing I struggle with. Is like I can find examples of bad defenses, but what I can't find examples of is this many injuries. I mean, I just can't. The injuries are. There comes a point where it's just going to boil over, So that's really the big thing is can they overcome the injuries? And to me, that starts with, let's start the line of scrimmage because even the teams I brought up that didn't have good defenses, they always had good pass rush. They had a good pass rush. They can control the line of scrimmage. They can control the opponent's run game. That's what the Lions have to really hang their hat on. And I know they do, but they have to get back to doing that and really dominating the line of scrimmage. And if they can do that, red zone defense, it's important. Can Kirby get back to getting takeaways? Yeah, that's important. But if you're going to have a defense that's underwhelming, you got to be stout at the line of scrimmage. That's what's really got to matter. And on offense, they got to get back to dominating the line of scrimmage. So it goes on both sides. I think you look at the run game, like I said, 6 yards a carry between both the running backs combined the last 2 games is not going to work. Shout out to Adam for the $2. His confidence if we drop to 5 seed 2010 Packers. Man, I mean, I think anything right now, guys, but the 1 seed to me is concerning. To have the bye week and to make teams come to Ford Field to better your chance of winning that football game is the priority. Anything about if you don't win this division, you got a whole nother thing coming. If you can't even get a home game, you got a whole nother thing coming. So no, I appreciate you the super chat, Adam, but no, I would be panicked if they would drop to the 5th seed. I would be. They got to win this. They got to win this division. They got to. And the number 1 seed should be the priority, but they got to win this division. They just do at the very minimum. I mean, you can't if you lose out on the number 1 seed and you lose the division. You're talking about you dropped 2 or 3. You might have lost all 3 games of the rest of the year, or you lost 2 of the 3 and you lost to the Vikings. Like it's just you can't do that. Hell no. All right, let's see here. Zachary, I would want the bye before home field. We need time to rest back to that early bye week. Yeah. I agree with you, Zachary. Cody, run game and run defense was horrible yesterday. Nick, one of you guys said Jamal Adams would be a beast. He's not. That was me. And to be fair, I didn't say he would be a beast. I said I thought he'd have an impact in this game. I thought he'd play 20, 30 snaps. Didn't even clear that, by the way. I was wrong. Jamal Adams is even worse than I expected. They don't trust him. It is what it is. He played 17% of the snaps, I believe. So I don't know. I thought he played 20 to 30%, but he didn't even touch that. So yeah, Jamal Adams, it's bad. And Nick saying, what's the record of these players when Jeff posts videos of players? Well, to be fair, Nick, I don't know. I would like to say I'm up. But yeah, that Jamal Adams was a miss. That was like the Nick Young meme. I shot, turned around, did the 3. It rimmed out. That was tough. Brutal miss by me. All right. Let's see. Booner. Shout out to Booner. He says injuries and defense is just a concern for the Super Bowl versus elite quarterbacks like Allen and Mahomes. Yeah. I mean, that's the reality of the situation you're in. And again, there comes a time. Jesus, Matt, Jesus. There comes a time where it just becomes too much, and the offense comes to a point where they just can't make a mistake. It feels like it's like if you have Jared Goff played. It's crazy. Like the difference, right? 5 interceptions against the Texans and they win. 5 passing touchdowns against the Bills and they lose. But you know what the difference was? The defense held the Texans to 0 points in the second half. Now, is that going to happen consistently? No, but the defense was there. Adam, appreciate you, man. He says, last year we saw what happened when we had to depend on the offense to be perfect, lines up 24/7, and then disappeared for 3 drives and lost the game. Adam, you're spot on. I mean, you are spot on. Last year it was a similar situation, but here's the thing, Adam, and I hate to be I hate to deliver bad news, but you don't even have Aiden this year. So they disappeared, and they didn't even have arguably one of the best pass rushers in the league. And now this year they don't even have him. So, and they had a hard time getting to Brock. Now it's not going to be Brock this year, but insert Jalen Hurts, whoever. They had a hard time getting to Brock Purdy with Aiden. And now you got to get to a better offensive line in the Eagles without Aiden? It's tough. Like, the only thing you have right now, truthfully, with the injuries kind of piling up, and if you want to still make a case for them to get to the Super Bowl, it's very clear. Offense has to be historically great in the postseason. There's no other way around it. They have to be historically great. And you need the defense to get turnovers consistently again and stop the run. They at least have to do that. Because if they don't, they're screwed. I mean, that's just the reality. All you would have at that point, if they can't do that, is just hope. It's just like, well, I hope they can. There's no actual data to suggest they can, and especially with that type of defense. So they got to get back to dominating the line of scrimmage on defense, on offense, obviously. And they got to get turnovers. That's what they hang their hat on. They have not been able to do that. Did they have a turnover last game? They did, a forced fumble. Against the Packers. Yeah, they did. Let's see. Sherry, you guys are always so negative on the Lions. It's one loss, teams lose, get over it, and get on. You guys are always trying to over-exaggerate not liking or your expectations. They are still an amazing. I will not listen to you guys anymore. I cannot stand the heat undertone in your voice. Well, Sherry, I appreciate the comment. I would be remiss if I didn't come on here and address the worries and concerns. I think I'd be doing a disservice to the audience if I sat up here and said, 12-2, they're winning it all. I think I'd be being dishonest, and that's not me. I'm going to bring up concerns. Again, guys, the conversation is not, are they a good team? They are. The conversation is, when you have 20 guys on injury reserve, when do you get to a point where you start to panic? I think it's very fair. So I'm sorry to hear that, Sherry. I am. But I'm not going to sit up here and spew positivity all show. That's not what I truthfully believe in. I'm going to be positive when it's time to be positive. And I'm going to address things and be honest when it's time to be honest. And I think that's the reality. And Sherry says, your negative vibe all the time is so irritating. Wow. Sorry to hear that, Sherry. I am. I really don't mean to be negative. I'm just bringing up legitimate concerns. I mean, seriously, I think like mentioning the Lions combined the last 2 games are averaging 6 yards between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Yards per carry, 6 yards per carry between both running backs. That's a concern. Like, I would hate to sit up here and be like, oh, yeah, they'll be fine. Which, do I believe they will be? Probably. But I have to point that out. Get back to running the football. When you talk about the injuries and losing your starting defensive end, your starting defensive tackle, your starting corner, starting linebacker, and now you've lost a bunch of depth pieces after that. Yeah, you have to bring it up. Matt, blow smoke up our ass, Jeff, instead. Well, Matt, yeah, I mean, some people do prefer that. And again, if you do, hey, everyone has their own preference. I still think the Lions are a very good team. I don't feel like I shouldn't even have to say that. I feel like we all know it. I think everyone in this chat understands that. I don't think if you bring up concerns, you don't believe in the Lions. I think that's ridiculous. You do. And Aaron Booner chiming in. Cause for concern, yes, but Super Bowl is still on. They're still second in Super Bowl odds. Dan has proven to win 11 straight games, all the injuries. I have faith this man can get it done. I get the end of that comment is the biggest thing. I have faith. At this point, all you got is faith with the injuries. That's kind of what you have to have because it would be they can they do it? Sure. I mean, absolutely they can. But the starting corner being out for potentially the entire year, it stinks. It does. And you're starting defensive tackle. Like at some point, it might be too much. So it's something to pay attention to. They got the Chicago Bears this week on the road. Which I think they should be able to take care of. They're getting a pissed off Lions team. So the Bears are going to have their hands full. But let's just start there. Beat the Bears, beat the 49ers, beat the Vikings, get the number 1 seed. Get the bye week. Take it from there. Booner, so you don't think they can win the Super Bowl, Jeff? That pause is concerning. I'll say this. My confidence level compared from last week to this week has regressed for sure. And I think if you're not admitting that, you must be a positive person. And I love that. I love the positivity. I do. But if we're looking at this objectively, I think everyone's confidence level after more injuries have to decrease. Like, I don't think anyone on the street is going to come in and just replace Carlton Davis and replace Ali McNeil. Sorry, I think they're good players. I do. And I think it's going to be hard to replace those two. So, my confidence level has definitely decreased. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and be the guy to say they can't win a Super Bowl. I'm not doing that. But man, yeah, my confidence has definitely dropped for sure. And I'm not just talking about winning the Super Bowl. Like, and I said this earlier, we got to stop focusing on the Super Bowl. Like, we could focus on it, but let's just get through the playoffs first. Like, let's get out there and win some games and get to the Super Bowl. Like, I think we're being a little naive here. If we're just like, oh yeah, they're already in the Super Bowl. They're booked. Like, get your hotel rooms already ready. Like, you still got to get there some good teams now, in the NFC, especially with the injuries. The playing field is a little more even. Definitely. So, we can talk about the Super Bowl when we get there. That's where I'm at now on Monday morning. We could talk about the Super Bowl when we get there. Let's just get through the damn playoffs. Let's just get to the damn playoffs. The Jay-Z back-to-back NFC North title should be priority number 1. Yeah, that's again NFC North. Get that, lock that up, and of course you'll get the number 1 seed if you win out. I mean anyway, but yeah, focus on those things. Focus on what's in front of you. You have the Bears. I see Damon Dice is in here, but the Bears at Soldier Field, Jeff. The weather. They'll be practicing outside this week. I mean, the Bears are getting a pissed off Lions team, and the Bears are on a short week. So I mean, do the Bears? Is it a weird matchup? Usually with the Lions, yeah, but I think the Lions are going to be so fired up this week. And I think it'll be another kind of litmus test. You're going to be facing a Bears team, which is kind of middle of the pack. Just go beat them. Just go beat them. With the injuries, all you got to do is come out with a win. So I don't care about style points in this game. I really don't. I just go win. And then you have the 49ers with the injuries they have the week after. So, Cody, I'm scared of the teams in the first round we might have to play. Rams, Packers easily could beat us. I mean, Cody, you're not crazy. I think it's fair to say, like, hey, those teams are good teams, and the Lions with injuries, it's more concerning. I think that's fair. I don't know about easily beat us, but I think it'd be a much more fair matchup for sure than it was before all the injuries. Let's see here. Booner. He said, but Dan Campbell has proven to overcome big-time injuries already. You got 8 straight wins after losing your best defensive players and 12 others on IR. Yes, and I did say earlier that Dan Campbell, being the head coach, gives me a lot of confidence. But I think what we have to realize here, and when you're looking at the kind of the win streak post-Aiden, because he went out in Dallas, they beat the Vikings, which is a big win. But do we see the Vikings as a team you might face in the NFC Championship game? I don't really necessarily think of them as that. You may think that. But I think the Vikings are still under the Lions. They beat the Titans. They beat Green Bay. I think they're better than Green Bay, but it's still a big win. Beat Houston. Still a good win. Then they took care of the Jags, the Colts, the Bears. and they beat Green Bay again. So have they faced some good teams? Absolutely. But like, again, you're not looking at these teams to measure yourself. I mean, we're talking about the Bills actually right now, this team that you faced yesterday in the Super Bowl, or the Eagles when you get to the NFC Championship game. That's what you have to measure yourself up to. And I think with the injuries, it's a much more closer. I'm not saying they can't do it again. And I think Dan Campbell's a type of guy where you look at, you're like, yeah, he could overcome it. But at some point, Booner, he's a coach, players play. I mean, he can only do so much. It's not like Dan can cast a spell and Ezekiel Turner's an elite player. So, and again, through that stretch of games, by the way, Booner, you're forgetting something. They had Carlton Davis and Aleem McNeil. So what does it look like without those? I think it's a fair question. Because you got to see it. Carlton Davis in that Houston game, 2 interceptions. You don't have him. Aleem McNeil causing havoc against the Packers. You don't have him. So at least you have Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's like the ultimate rah-rah, rally the troops, fight adversity. I feel more comfortable having Dan Campbell as the head coach. So, I think it's a fair thing to be concerned today. I'm not saying lose all faith in the Detroit Lions and they're a bad team, still a very good team, but they're a team that has to do more offensively to compensate for the injuries on defense. They have to do more, and they have to get back to what they do well, which is dominate the line of scrimmage. The offense, you can't afford turnovers on offense. They can't do it. And on defense, they got to create some turnovers. They got to get back to that. So, I would be, honestly, I'm just being honest today, guys. Confidence has definitely decreased, but I'm not ruling them out. I don't want to be that guy to come on Monday and say, no way, no how they're winning a Super Bowl, and call Dan Campbell a bad coach and call him Brandon Staley like Rob Parker. I'm not doing that. I'm just not. But Dan Campbell's going to rally the fellas, and we'll see what happens. Win out, get the number 1 seed, get that bye week, you get some reinforcements back. That's the positive. And if you get Anzalone and Derek Barnes, that's great news. But we'll see. Let's see. Sherry, Sherry, I thought you said you weren't watching. But I'll read your comment, though. I appreciate you watching. 2 years ago, we would have been dying for a season like this. Instead of enjoying it, Jeff, you always have to find negatives. Your negatives rubs off on the rest of the pod. Sherry, you're right. I have been dying for a season like this. But again, I got to be honest. Just have to. And I know there's people out there that appreciate it. And I know there's people out there that just would love me to spit positivity all show. And I just can't do it. I did have a ton of positive things to say, by the way, today. I don't know what Sherry's talking. If you listen to the whole thing, Sherry, I had plenty of things to talk about that were positive. But my main thing was just discussing the injuries. It's almost like a venting session. Lions fans want to go somewhere to vent. They do. And they like coming out and hanging out and talking about stuff that bothers them and frustrates them and they're confused by. And people like hanging out here, and I appreciate it. But, Sherry, I appreciate the comment. I'm sorry that you're frustrated. I don't want that to happen. But let's see. I'm by the way, not even going to attempt to say this name. Telawo Seze. Now I am, actually. Telawo Yan. I think I butchered that. I prefer we lose to Buffalo anyway, rather than our conference opponents. True. But this one still hurts because our defense is more banged up than ever. The offense just carries this team again. I mean, well said. I'll just say Telly. What's a nickname for you? Can we get a nickname? But yeah, great comment, by the way. Appreciate you, Adam. Appreciate you, Matt. You guys are the best. And always, man, we'll be live tonight. We'll get into more of a group conversation. I know it'll be a good combo with Boone because he's going to make great points too. And we'll have a good conversation as it pertains to the Detroit Lions, kind of getting a Super Bowl and confidence level for the rest of the season. Sherry, if you want to tune in, feel free. Come hang out. You're welcome, Sherry. You're welcome to tune in, Sherry. You're always welcome. But yeah, we'll be live later. I appreciate your guys' support on this. I love getting a chance to talk to you guys in the morning. I know everyone's schedule's a little different, so it gives people an opportunity that aren't able to watch live at night to watch in the morning. And we save a lot of stuff for the nighttime to discuss. But today, I'd like to get in some more of a Monday morning overreaction, injury thoughts, stuff like that. And it was a great show today. So appreciate you all for hanging out with me. You could have been anywhere else, but you're with me. So I appreciate you for that. And Damon Dice, appreciate you, brother, as always, man, tuning in. Even though, hey, Bears are going to catch an L this weekend, Damon, but hey, appreciate you always tuning in, man. This should be a place for any fan, honestly, of any team. It does not matter. I will catch you guys tonight, 8 p.m. Be there. We'll be live. Me, Booner, Lucas. It'll be a great time. We'll have Corey Woods on as well. But until later on, I will catch you all. Go Lions. Sherry, go Lions.